Welcome to episode 23 of The Expert and the Idiot. I'm here today with Owen McIntyre of Rogue Reptiles and obviously Morelia Python Radio. And you're on the other side. You're going to be interviewed today.
Not my first time being on the other side. It's interesting each time because it's like some of them skew more towards Rogue and then other ones skew more towards like MPR, and other ones are like right down the middle where it's like we talk about like kind of either or, and some just kind of go the other way. I have no idea where the hell we're going. So, yeah.
Well, a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Just right off the bat, not reptile related. What hobbies do you have outside of reptiles? Or is it all reptiles all the time? Do you wake up thinking about snakes and reptiles and go to sleep thinking about snakes and reptiles?
I think I wake up and go to sleep thinking of snakes and reptiles just because it seems like there's always something that needs to be done with the snakes and the reptiles. The other hobbies outside of snakes and stuff like that is I do like to play video games with my friends, which has kind of gotten harder and harder to do as we've all grown up and like got families and moved across the planet. But there's that, and then just kind of going out and hiking and stuff like that, just kind of being outdoors. But that kind of leads to herping, so it's like it can still plug into reptiles and stuff like that. So that's it. But I am kind of a one-trick pony where all my stuff tends to kind of come back around to snakes and reptiles. So yeah,
that's wild. What do you and your wife go hiking together? Is that like something you guys do together?
We do. A lot of times she does. She likes to go trail riding and stuff like that. She's a horse veterinary technician and stuff like that. So she likes to go riding and stuff like that. And every once in a while she'll find a trail that has like a component, and we kind of live close to a couple of good parks out here in PA, one of which is actually right down at the bottom of our road. It's like the Birdsboro Quarry, and it's supposed to be a hotbed for copperheads. I have never seen one, but we go down there. We used to definitely go a lot more with our dog, but now it's kind of like just the two of us kind of go and walk with coffees and stuff like that. So it's nice.
Nice. So you guys have a dog and you have cats, right? You've fostered cats.
We had a dog. He passed recently, and then now we have 4 cats. We had 3, and then I messed up after my dog died and kept one of the foster kittens. So we're not supposed to do that. But right now we do have right now 2 bottle feeding kittens that my wife's taking care of, and then we have her sulcata tortoise, and then she has a pet rat and a pet squirrel. So that's pretty much rounds up. Yeah, that rounds out the non-snake part of the house. So yeah.
All right. So you're in the north where you get snow and ice. So what the hell do you do with a sulcata tortoise?
He's got a pen inside that takes up a good portion of the basement that I could probably fit like 2 or 3 stacks of cages in, and has not become something that we talk about. Like, we're not allowed to refer to that anymore. But so he's got a pen that he comes in the wintertime. It's got a den for him to go into that's got radiant heat panels, and it's got spots for him to come bask out where there's sun. And pretty much the entire spring and summer, my wife is just growing cabbages, zucchinis, all this kind of stuff, cutting them up, vacuum sealing them so that when winter comes around, he's got food to eat. So, I mean, like, we have a garden. Very little of it is for us. Like, it's mostly goes to the turtle. So, yep.
That's awesome. So he just free ranges in the backyard until winter?
We've separated part of the yard by using repurposed railroad ties, like big wood railroad ties stacked up. So he's got half the yard that he kind of just roams, and then the first landing of our deck stairs has become kind of like his little den during the summertime. So he kind of just stays there, and all summer, rain, whatever, it doesn't matter. He'll just roam and eat grass, and we'll throw him vegetables and stuff like that. throughout the summertime, and then he just comes in winter. So, but so far it's been the best for him. His shell's been growing nice and round and flat, no pyramid, no points, and he's got no problems. He's growing like a weed, which is unfortunate because I'm not sure how long the wall is going to hold him before I have to like go up another railroad tie. So yeah.
How old is he?
We don't know. So when my wife lived down in Florida for a while, as a vet tech down there, and somebody, I guess the people who owned him moved and left him in the backyard.
Oh.
And people on the block were like throwing stuff over the fence for him, because the other thing is in Florida, you don't really have a lush lawn unless you try, you pay attention to it. So there wasn't a lot. So after a certain amount of time, I guess the neighbors kind of got fed up with the fact that he was there and alone, and they kind of like broke into the backyard and pulled him out and drove him to the vet clinic that my wife worked at. And she messaged me and she's like, look at this beautiful boy that came in. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll start asking around. We'll find a home for him. And she's like, I've named him Mort. And I'm like, you're not supposed to name it. I'm like, we cannot keep this tortoise. We do not have room for this tortoise. When you come up to Pennsylvania, we're not going to have any place to put the tortoise. I will get you a herd of pancake tortoises, but we cannot have. I love him. I've taken pictures of him. Yep, we're screwed. Yep, done. So I had to build a pen for him in the basement because she moved up here in December. And he couldn't go outside, so I had to have it ready for when they arrived. So,
wow.
Yep.
And what about the squirrel? What's the story with the squirrel?
No squirrels in Florida actually take care of their young. I'm pretty sure they just drop them off on people's front porches. People raise them in Florida and then release them. This one, he has seizures and cannot be released. Oh. So I tried to tell my wife that we couldn't have the squirrel, and she called Pennsylvania Fish and Wildlife and got permission and a license for the squirrel, and I was promptly defeated, and now we have a squirrel. So, but he's only here. We're not going to be replacing him when he dies. The unfortunate part is that squirrels in captivity can live to be like 15 years old. So we're here for a while now. And then the rat was, I got it in my head to breed my own rats for a bit. Yeah. Which I breed my own mice, which I have 2 bins full of mice, and they just churn out babies, and that's fine. Rats take longer, and for me to get the bang out of a rat is I need a small rat or a medium rat, and it's a lot. I need a rack system. I need time. I need something. So we decided that wasn't going to work, but she had already fallen in love with the male rat that we had, so that was it. All the other rats were found new homes or were eaten, and then this one has just kind of been here. So
yeah. Yep. Now is it worth breeding mice? Is it just supplemental? Is it for things that are feeding on live? Like,
I've found it to be helpful for like supplemental. Like you can get mice up to fuzzies and hoppers pretty quickly, and when you have a good amount of babies, it helps to be able to have hoppers and fuzzies when you need them. It's also helpful for, like you said, if I had a clutch of bredli where 4 of the babies this year started on live, just because I had live hoppers, and normally I'd have to wait for a show, go get live, bring them home, feed them. But I was able to drop the fuzzies in there, get them started on live, and then do a quick transition on to frozen thawed. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. But it does help. It's just one more thing, especially because, but it is a cheaper thing. 2 bins. I think the bins cost me $20. The food I can get in bulk at Reptile shows, but that's also for my mice, her rat, and her squirrel. So, but you can also get bags of rodent chow at like Walmart for pretty cheap. And then it's just bedding that you can get pretty quickly and easily too. And it does help with having sometimes with some of the smaller species like rhino rat snakes and other the really tiny babies, you need fresh red pinkies, like we're talking like just born. So it's good to have that option that if I need to get those, all I got to do is just pay attention to the moms in the mice bin for a little bit, and I can be right there when it happens. So
Baby Stimson's pythons too, I would imagine, right?
Probably. I mean, we're probably going to be baby children's pythons. Will be something we're going to have to do with that. And I kind of find that you find what the snake wants, and if you can supply that,
Yeah.
it makes your life a hell of a lot easier than trying to like force them on to what you want them to eat. So having that option or those options of live, fresh babies, older babies, larger, the meat, like sometimes you have snakes that are in between a fuzzy and a hopper, and I can just kind of pluck when I like the litter when I need it. It helps. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a jungle carpet that only takes quail, and I've just given up. I'm not trying anymore.
I wouldn't, because the thing is, I've had my Macklot's python would only take chicks when he was younger, and I got him close to breeding size on just chicks. Like he'd have like 4 or 5 at a time, which is odd because my male Dunn's python's doing the same thing right now. But I put my Macklots down for winter, first time ever going down for winter, and when he came back up, I only offered him a rat, and now he's been on rats, chicks, fish, like he'll eat anything.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes it's that downturn goes with. Now on the other side of it, I have a Darwin albino that's a mouser. He's never, ever gone off of mice. He's a male though, so I don't care what he wants. He can eat retired breeder mice, and he is a proven male, so it doesn't matter. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need him to do anything. He can have 2 large mice every sitting and he's off to go. So with the good thing now is that it used to be you'd have chicks and that's almost like as big as you could get. Now they kind of have added all the different species and sizes of quail, so you can still move up on a birder to get them up the size if you need to.
Yeah, it's so annoying. I mean, I tried so long with the mice, and it's like he gets angry at them and strikes at them.
Yep.
It's like he's offended that they're in his tub, and but wants nothing to do with eating them. And then I put a bird in there, and he'll grab them right out of my fingers. And it's like, what is wrong with you?
Honestly, that's a lot like the Ruffies. Some of the Ruffy babies went straight on to frozen thawed hoppers, and the rest didn't want to do it. But if you like, I would be teasing them with a hopper, and they would have their heads turned like completely away. Take out the hopper, you lower a button quail down, and like you see their head just like turn as like they get a scent of it. It's like, what the like.
Yeah.
So some of them just don't recognize rodent as food. So after a certain amount of time, you can kind of trick them into being like, no, this is food. Sometimes that's going down for winter. That's sometimes wetting the mouse and like just covering it in chick down and then offering it to them. Sometimes it's trying to feed it, like daisy chain it after they've eaten one, give them another one. Like you almost need to get it to click in their head that this and this are food.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is it worth that effort? Or is it, I mean, it seems like quail are like pretty affordable and chicks are like cheap as shit. So it's
exactly.
Like, why not just give in and say, hey, birds for you? That's fine.
It's not a problem. It depends on what you want to do with it. Is it a male? Then hell no, it's not worth it. Like just give it as many chicks as it wants. Let it eat chicks, and it may never even get to larger quail, but you can get small, medium, large quail that you can move them up, because that's how I feed my male white lip. Mostly birds. Otherwise, he just gets fat, and I can't use him if he's fat. So there is probably no option to that. Now, if it's a female, I would be like, you think you want to monitor if you're trying to breed what their weight is. But if you do it correctly, there probably isn't a reason to change after that either. Like just assess the situation after they lay eggs, whether they're able to put the size back on to breed again. If it takes them a year or two, it takes them a year or two. It doesn't really matter. It's not like it's crucial. So yeah, I don't really see a need. And I've also fed chicken wings. Like you go to the store and get like the whole chicken wing. They'll eat those. The party wings that you can get at like Walmart in like a big bag that are like uncooked, unsalted, it's just a big raw chicken thing. All my snakes eat those. Like,
really?
Yeah. It's not a problem. I mean, I think limiting ourselves to it has to be a white rodent with red eyes that came out of a bag in my freezer is like one of the best things I got is Walmart has catfish nuggets. It's
Nuggets?
like lumps of catfish that you're supposed to like bread and then fry.
Yeah.
You just take that and you slice it up and you just like piles of it in my corn snakes, my king snakes, my Madagascar hognose, my Vietnamese blue beauties, my Chinese king rats, my rhino rat snakes, black rat snakes, pretty much every colubrid, and then some pythons will eat those.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Now, I do have a question for you. So, you are constantly talking to people in the hobby, and everybody does everything a little bit differently.
Yep.
How do you hear all of that and deal with all that input and not constantly change what you're doing? Like, obviously what you're doing is works, everybody knows that, but is that something you've ever dealt with? Have you ever sat there and thought like, why am I changing this? Because it works so great for this person, but now it's screwing me.
I think if I hadn't started breeding before we did the podcast, I would be constantly trying to figure that out. But I had, I think, and it wasn't a lot. I think it maybe only had like 1 or 2 python clutches under my belt when we started, but I had a formula that had worked. So I already had my base. Now, having listened and talked with all these people, especially people who have had success with species that I haven't and am wanting to, you tweak, but you still have your base. So you add, you change, you alter, and you just kind of see what works. But then it's also, you got to understand is that there is no set formula for every person. I can tell you exactly what I do with white lips, and you can try to recreate that in your setting with your animals, and it will never work. Just because it worked for me doesn't mean it worked for you. But you can take what I've done and try to mold it to work for you and your animals. Yeah. It sometimes it's easier depending on where you live. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes your animals just aren't compatible. Sometimes they don't like that way of doing things. And from what I feel is you find what works or what you think will work and you stick to it for a number of years in small tweaks. Yeah. If you wanted to, nothing major, because if you do that, you throw everybody off and then you restart and they need a couple of years of the same thing to do it again. But there have been tweaks, talking with people on the podcast about, what Timor pythons and white lips and stuff like that do in the wild and interact, and how people have had success with them and what they've done to have success has changed what I would do when it comes to those Indo species for breeding. But it's still my base care and breeding of them. It's just like everything's on a carpet python base, and then I tweak it and change it to the temps go lower, or food comes in at this time, or no food stops here, that kind of stuff. So there have been some, but you can't keep whipping it around. And understand just what works for somebody might not work for you. So just but also it's good to have the knowledge of something. If you've been hitting your head against a wall, maybe it is time to change something up. So it's good to have that backlog.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm in Florida, right? So, what other people are doing across the country could be just something I'll never be able to do,
right?
But I get to keep diamonds outside, so
exactly. I can't.
A boo boo,
right? But if I say I have to drop my olive pythons to a harsh winter, you're going to have to get an air conditioning and put them in a room that gets cooler. And that's just that is. Now, would you still have success? Probably. Would you have year after year after year clutch? Probably not. But you still might have one at random, which it's not a bad thing, especially for certain species that are harder to breed, because then you can hold on to the babies and you can slow grow and you can slow sell, and it doesn't matter. I'll take these are all my white lips. You guys can fight over the ones that I'm letting go, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. So how is breeding Timors going to be different for you? Like, what's your logic behind that? Because that's going to be this season, right?
Yes. So they're moving. Once I clear, there's some bredli in the cages that I want them to go into that are leaving Monday, and then the Timors are moving out into bigger cages. I got them. Rob Stone got them as fresh import babies, and he raised them for a number of years until they got into 41 quart bins, and then he moved them into cages, and they lost their little Timor minds and stopped eating and stuff like that. And he's like, I'm done with these. So he sent them to me. I kept them in a bin for about another year, feeding them up, and then I moved them into 3-footers. They were nervous, but they got the gist of it. Then they moved to 4-footers, and they've just been demons. Like, they've been food, let's go, and they've just packed on size. So we're right where I want to be with them. That they look really good. They're about comparable to their size, but the female does look a little bit heavier. Where I'm going to put them is they're going to be in 6-foot cages out in my outer room where I keep my olive pythons and my white lips, where it does get colder. So they are going to experience a little bit of a colder winter than, say, like the carpet pythons and stuff like that. But there's enough heat out there still that they're not going to drop to like they still have probes in their own cages. So I think the olives will have a harsher winter than they will. But the idea is to turn off food in November and kind of let them go, and then feed heavy when they come up in springtime. So what I've been told by everybody who's bred Timor pythons is you feed them till they puke.
Yeah.
And I don't like that idea. So it's like that. And I get the gist of it is that the migrating birds leave the lesser sundas and they come back, and these pythons are like, holy crap. And they will eat like 12 birds in one sitting because they don't know when the birds are how long the birds are going to be here and all that other stuff. So they will literally gorge to the point of possible regurgitation. I don't like wasting rodents and stuff like that. So what I'm thinking, and this kind of worked with the white lips, because when I got the white lip eggs, I brought them up and I had run out of medium rats, which is the normal food for my female. So I gave her a large, and it looked like she swallowed, I thought I killed her. Like, it looked like she swallowed a football. I'm like, sweet Jesus, she's fine. And then the swelling went down, and then she swelled up again. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What's that? And then the male was all over her, and I got the eggs. So I think the big intake of meal after the winter is partially the key for that. It almost simulates the gorging that they would have in the wild. So that's what I would like to do with the Timor pythons, is when they come up for spring, just throw large XLs, whatever, big meals at the girl to get her going, and then introductions with the male. And I want to get the male some food too, because right now he's on medium. So I might give him a large, her an XL kind of a deal. Just get them feeding and then get introductions. The good thing about their cages is that there's a bridge in between. So all I have to do is put a cap on a PVC pipe on either end, feed them, and then undo it, and we're good to go. So
nice.
That's what I'll do with them, and probably the white lips as well this year.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes for you.
It's gonna be a weird year this year because we got the white lips, the Timors, the scrubs, the Wamena scrubs, and the Dunai. So it's like last year was a lot of colubrid stuff. This year seems to be like, and Angolans. So it's like a lot of pythons that I've never bred before is this year. So
awesome. I wish you all success.
Thank you. We'll see how it goes.
And you're getting into the boa constrictors now too, huh?
I had rainbow boas and Dominican red mountain boas, and I now have a pair of Argentines and a pair of Hog Island boas, courtesy of Keith McPeak. So I have those, and I'm excited for them, but they are so far down the future, it's ridiculous. But damn thing's growing like freaking weeds. Like I can't keep. The Argentines went from, I think, a 6-quart bin at Keith's house when I picked them up to I set them up in 15s, and now they're in 32s. And I'm like, they're going to be in bigger, like, I'm going to need to, we're going to have to move some stuff around here in a minute. Like, you guys are going to need to chill. And it's just that what I find is when snakes move up in prey size, they just explode.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so they moved up from like medium mice to large mice, and they just exploded in size. And I'm like, crap, like, you guys need to chill. So they'll be cool. And that's just been a fun little side tangent to go on while I kind of figure out where I really want the Morelia stuff to kind of land, because I can't keep everything. So we're going to have to figure out where the path's going. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have such a diverse collection. It's crazy. You still have false water cobras too, right?
Yes. Yeah, I have a pair of adult false water cobra. I didn't get any eggs out of them this year, but I moved cages for them, and I wasn't really trying because I had tried last year and I was expecting nothing. And then she laid 16 eggs, and I'm like, well, crap, I got to figure out false water cobra. This year, I wanted to move them to a bigger cage. They were with each other. The male was trying. I just think she wasn't having it. So they're now in 6-foot cages with a bridge as well. And we're going to give them a chance this next year. And we'll try to get some eggs out of them again because those babies are fun. But they're also, I wouldn't mind them being a every so often pairing kind of a thing because I still have 3 babies from last year. So it's not like I'm drowning. Like they sold well, but I also don't want to be drowning in false water cobra babies because it's another animal that grows on oxygen. So it just they grew too quickly, and now they're in like 15s. Thank God I only have 3 of them left. So yeah.
How big are your adults and what size enclosure? They're about 6 foot.
Well, the adults are 6-foot enclosures. Them themselves are also they're about 6 feet.
Wow.
And the good thing is that when they're together, it's a bridge. So when they're together, it's a 12-foot cage.
Nice.
That's what I like about these kind of things of having it so that the animals can now use all this space. So there are 2 waters, 2 hides, 2 heat sources. So you don't get a lot of times when you have a big carpet female or a big boa female and a smaller male, she'll kick the shit out of him. And then he's not on the heat and then he can get sick and stuff like that. So giving them the option that if she wants nothing to do with him, he can still go over here and have heat, water, and stuff like that. So I kind of like that more and more, and it's kind of been including it into other projects because right now I have dogtooth cat eyes, the Boyega Cynodon, and they have cages that I'm going to figure out how to bridge with something so that they can do that. And then the plan for the guys behind me, the rough scale pythons, to add another bank of cages to the side so that the adult Ruffies can also have bigger cages when they're paired.
Nice. How are the false water cobras as adults? Are they pretty chill? Can you just reach in and take them out?
My male's pretty chill, but I also think he's as dumb as a sack of hammers. So
it's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. He's very defensive and he flares, but that's kind of like he feels like that's all he can do. He's like, it didn't work. All right, well, I'll just go with you then. So I tend to just kind of hook him, take him out, do whatever. The female, she's good when she's good when she's fed. If she's hungry, it's on. So as long as she's been fed, she's really ready to go. But that's pretty much how it goes. It's just I can't reach in and grab them, but wouldn't recommend that with anything just because that's how you get lit. And getting lit by a false water cobra brings the inherent other problems that come with a false water cobra. So they're good on a hook. But like I said, she's better when she's been fed.
Do you have like tubs for them to soak in? Is that a requirement?
They have their water bowls. Water bowls are cat litter pans.
Okay.
So they can get in them and they can soak, but they rarely do. I mean, maybe once or twice I see it, but you do see them getting that cracked, dry skin, especially in the wintertime, is bad. Them, white lips, ring pythons, they just look terrible in the wintertime, and that's just because it's so dry and stuff like that here. So having bigger water bins for them help. Their hide boxes are just moss and mulch and stuff, so I can spray that down. They do tend to take care of themselves when it comes to that stuff of being able to soak and do whatever. They did a lot more when they were smaller. They soaked a lot more when they were smaller, which was cool. When they were tiny, I used to, because I have the rhino babies eat fish. I have to get feeder minnows. And there's always, you ask the dude at the pet store, I need like 20 minnows, and he just scoops. And every once in a while, he gets like that one minnow that has been living in the minnow tank for about a year and a half and is like 3 times the size of all the other minnows. And it's like, well,
pregnant.
I can't feed this to a baby rhino. So I drop it in the false water cobra water bowls when they were tiny, and they went absolutely bonkers on them. So they just would scoop them out and do that. So I don't get them live fish anymore because it would just be like a feeder. Like I don't know how big I would have to get, but they'll eat frozen fish, frog legs, stuff like that too, all the time.
Nice. Do you keep on substrate or paper mostly?
Depends. So most of the pythons in the cages are on paper, but then like my scrubs, my white lips, my ring python, they're all on mulch. So, and then a lot of my colubrids are on mulch just because it's easier to clean them on that. It just, like I said, it kind of depends. So about half and half at this point, I think.
Okay. And do you mist?
I do not, unless there's a problem. So if they look like if they're going blue in the wintertime and they look kind of dry, I'll mist or soak. But other than that, everybody usually has a water bowl that is pretty considerable in size for them to either drink or get into.
Yeah.
It hasn't really been a problem, but you do still get the stuck sheds, especially on white lips in the wintertime, Timors in the wintertime. My retic cannot shed in a full piece or at once ever. She's gotten better because I gave her like a tree fell down in the yard and I gave her like a log in there that she could scrape onto. So that helps, but still, it's still a fiasco every time she sheds. So it just depends on what they need.
Do you, in your experience, do RIs happen in too dry of conditions, too wet of conditions, or do you think it doesn't have to deal with humidity so much?
I don't think it doesn't. I think humidity. I think high humidity doesn't help, only because I think high humidity is a wonderful birthplace for bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is just a infection in the lungs. Now, how that happens, tons of different ways. So I think you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think they could happen in a dry, they could happen in a wet. But like I said, if you have a humidifier and you feel like I'm helping my snakes, but this humidifier hasn't been cleaned in like 6 years, then are you really helping, or are you just kind of like spraying bacteria in the air? So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with husbandry. So humidity, it's a thing. If your snake is constantly in a wet soup, it's going to get sick, but so would you if you were sitting in that. So I don't think there's any, I wouldn't say that drier is better. I would just say that clean is good. Clean helps.
Yeah. My ball python has an RI right now. Well, she's like 10 days into antibiotics and I'm just beating myself up over it endlessly.
'Tis the season. I got 2 that have respiratories right now that are kicking them just because it happens, and that's the other thing too, is that I think a lot of people you have to monitor your tapes. You have to monitor your heating elements. If you have a rack, I had an adult rack with the big, what the hell is the inches? It's like 6-inch wide heat tape that goes throughout the entire back of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 animals got RIs, and I'm like, when's the last time I changed this tape? They had the old metal clamp stuff on there, and I'm like, it's been a while. So I ordered all new tape, and they're all here, and I got to pull a whole rack out and rip out all the tape. And it's like, I think people take for granted that the heating element is there, and the heating element is clearly working, right? And it's like, you have to pay attention to those kinds of things. Tapes burn out. Tapes don't work. You should always change. You should have a routine of changing your tapes, because that's how you get dead spots, you get sick animals, you get insane spots, and you melt down a rack. Like, it's that kind of stuff. And I miss the fact that the radiant heat panels don't have little LED lights on them, because that was another way I could tell when a panel was going bad, is that there was no light. And it's like, oh crap. So now I have to like put my hand up to it and see what's going on. But I think our hardware is our best friend and also our potential worst enemy. So, but you got to keep up on your stuff. I have had friends that have burned their house down because of tape and stuff like that. So I think they say every 2 years.
Really?
I think. But that was, you need to understand, is that was, we're not using these things for what they were designed for. Like they're supposed to heat pipes or be installed on underneath people's concrete floors to heat floors and stuff like that. They're not supposed to be for what we're doing them. So I want to say maybe you should just keep up on them, but I know some people who change their tapes out religiously. So yeah,
that's a good tip. I honestly wouldn't have thought about that probably until I ran into a catastrophic failure or just a failure.
And I've been in those. I've come downstairs and be like, why does it smell like melting plastic?
Oh Jesus.
And I've had an entire stack, a rack of 10 32 quart bins. It went haywire and it melted holes in 6 of the bins. None of the animals were hurt and nothing bad happened, but there were holes like this big where the heat tape was. And
wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's scary as hell. So
man.
Yep.
So, and I think of this RI that I'm dealing with right now. I mean, like you said, 'tis the season. That made me feel a lot better because, like I said, I've been beating myself up for 10 days, and it was right before the storm smashed into our state. And I had to go to a new vet, and they prescribed doxycycline 1 mil, which was a lot to squeeze into this ball python who's like 800 grams.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so and they're like, well, is she getting better? And I'm like, I can't tell because I have to ram 1 mil of fluid into her and then it comes out. And you gave me raspberry flavored, which is sugary and sticky. So I have to clean that. And then it's bubbling out of her nose. So how am I it's very hard for me to look at her and say, yeah, she's doing great.
Great. Yeah. I've become a big proponent in when you take the snake to the vet, ask them to culture things because normally the antibiotics are Batril and ceftazidime, and those are the things. But then every once in a while, you get a bug that is resistant to those things. We had a snake a couple years ago. It just had something. I don't know where it came from. It was the only one in the collection. It just, whatever was in it was resistant to Batril and ceftaz. And what it ended up needing was some sort of oral medication that my wife had to grind up in a pestle with a mortar, mix it up with fluid, and then we would it was an oral medication that injected into her mouth, this wet white paste that was because normally it would be like, oh yeah, you just pill the cat. It's but it can't pill a snake. Yeah. And so we had to do that, and the snake recovered 100%. But normal people out there would have just kept drawing up a syringe full of whatever and kept hitting them with it, not noticing what was going on.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned. I've treated with Batril before, and it's orally, and it was a much smaller dose. It was it was 0.3 ml,
Normally we only do intramuscular with Batril, but you got to hit the muscle, which is hard because if you don't hit the muscle, it goes too shallow and you can get what's called a Batril burn. Scales get all fucked up, discolored.
Oh, Jesus.
And there's a welt. Now, snakes are really good at healing. So there's a giant scab. They heal. Sometimes there's a hole in their body. You can see ribs and then it closes. But that's, again, if you're too shallow. But it just comes from inexperience with that kind of stuff. So the good thing is having my wife here is a vet tech. I have an open to a wonderful world of things to help keep my snakes alive. Yeah. But there's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's just inexperience. That's why some people tend to just get they used to be, they would get the medications from Tractor Supply, and they would just load up these syringes and just hit the snake. And that's a ton of medication that's way over what it needed to get. And you burned half the side of it. It's all that crap. So I think the problem is the distrust of veterinary care that we kind of have inherent, where you take your snake to a normal vet and they're like, I don't know. I just do cats and dogs. Yeah. Finding yourself a good reptile vet is something I think you should do when you have a pretty nice sized collection, just because you might be out of your element and you want to keep the animal happy and healthy. So
yeah, and it's one that's consistently in office too, because I have a good reptile vet, but then it was well, he'll be in on Saturday. I'm like, it's Monday.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah. And that's the other problem is that people, that's the thing, is that people are like, my snake is sick, I'm going to turn up the heat and wait for 2 weeks. I'm like, those 2 weeks are important. Like, you should call and schedule the vet appointment for 2 weeks. Like, because that they might have a 2 week waiting period to get you in. And then, yeah, you can mech around with the heat and whatever, but waiting 2 weeks and then trying, now it's further down the road. Like, it's, people automatically assume that they can just get their pet in right now. And sometimes that's not the same. Like, that's not true. So.
Yeah, it's like, you shouldn't. I've never waited. As soon as it comes up, it's like, all right, tomorrow morning I'm making a call. Screw this. Why am I going to mess around with this when I could pay $115 and get medication and a visit?
Because some people would like to think that if they just kind of click the dial on the heat a little bit, like, it's like, done. Yeah. There we go. You're good now. I fixed you. Like, okay.
Yeah. And and that's what happened with my ball python too. She had a terrible shed. It was like her skin exploded inside the cage. I mean, and I was like, I'm never dealing with this again, so I'm going to fix this humidity issue and increase the humidity. And then all of a sudden I took her out and I'm like, oh no, she's gasping for air, and
I have seen ones turn around from like open mouth breathing kind of, I've had friends, animals that they ask us to take a look at that look absolutely horrible, that if you could tweak a little bit of their husbandry and give them some meds, they're fine.
Yeah.
So it's like, and also I've had ones that just die out of nowhere. So it's like, and this is unfortunately the side of dealing with live animals. If we all cared about pet rocks, we could just slap googly eyes on another rock and we'd be happy. But that's part of it. You have this many animals in this much group, and there are going to be ones that drop off for no reason or get sick consistently, or ones that you're going to have to keep an eye on, because you're coming into fall, and usually every fall you're kind of like, it helps knowing your animals too. It's like how when a certain female's gravid is because she sits sideways. Everybody else would just be like, whatever, she's sitting funny, but she never sits this way unless she's gravid. Same thing goes with that. Like, this animal eats like a champ and would never kind of hold their mouth in this kind of a way. So I think going with your instincts of, if you open a bin and something's not right, follow that thread, like explore what's wrong. Because there could be nothing, but your instincts are going to be your best help here. This isn't right. This isn't right. Let's see why.
Yeah. How do you deal with, have you ever had to deal with regurgitation? And if so, how do you deal with it? It's a lovely
situation. Yeah, it's a great situation.
I'm dealing with that with my Argentines right now. I have two brand new babies, and I am just hating myself in life because they're
regurges are hard, because you want to be in it that they can, and I hate it alongside with the ones that are like, I'm going to take this rat, I'm going to hide it under my water bowl for you later. It's like, no, why would you do that? Like, I don't, or in the water, which is worse. Like, I don't, then you get to play my favorite game, which is find the smell. But with regurg, it's hard because there could be so many different reasons for regurg. Thank God we're not in the realm of emerald tree boa, where you get regurgitation syndrome and you're on. And that's like, okay, well, this is the beginning of the end. With certain animals, regurg can just happen. I've had animals regurg and then pass, and I don't know what the hell happened. But then also I've had ones that will consistently regurg. Mainly it happened in my stonewash bredli from last year, where we got a couple that regurged, and a lot of times it was just because the meal was too big. So I backed it down, and a lot of them, after I backed it down, kept all the food down and we're doing great. Okay. That happens a lot with babies. They just went a little bit too far for them to feel comfortable, or they really wanted to get into their hide box to feel safe, and this meal is stopping me. There we go. Now I can get in. Cool, thanks. But other ones, after we went back down to smaller size, kept regurgitating, and then I noticed they started getting little lumps in their stomach area. Like, they would eat, they would regurge and would still look like they swallowed a fuzzy. That's not good. So then figuring it out, one died, cut it open. It was riddled with tumors in its stomach. And it's like, okay. So that's something that is beyond my control. That is something that's attached to the snake. That's something that's attached to the mutation. That's just something. So obviously what then I did is I pulled everything off the website. And then if they would consistently hold down meals and they had no lumps, after a while, and a couple sheds of that, then I put them up for sale. But there were, out of the clutch of 16, I think I put down 8 just because they were they started getting thinner, but they still had those lumps in them. And it was just, everything went in and was upchucked. And it was like, I'm not going to keep doing this. Yeah. That's not fair. So, but a lot of them, I think I have 3 right now that are rocking and rolling, putting on size, eating, growing. But it's weird because there they are from last year. And then I have a clutch from this year, same father, different mother, where nothing's been regurging, but they've just been pounding food. So it's like these guys are here size-wise, and then these guys are clumping up really quickly just because they're able to just be rocking and rolling. These guys had to go from hoppers down to fuzzies and stay there until everybody was not throwing up, and we weeded out all the ones that were having issues. So
is that a normal practice? Do you often do a necropsy after an animal dies to see what's going on? Do you do it, or does your wife do it, or do you guys do it together?
I'll do it if there's something that I have a question of. Like this one was, what are these lumps? And I already kind of had an idea of what, because there's only stomach cancer is one of the leading causes of death in an adult male carpet python, because they get them, they start throwing them up, and you see the lumps because the snake will start losing weight. And then like a big male all of a sudden starts losing weight, and you notice that their body goes from like a bump, and it's like, okay, right around where the stomach's supposed to be. That's what it is, you know? And I've had a couple snakes where it happened. I think I had a juvie Mac where it happened and cut it open, tumor. I had an adult male carpet python, same deal. And then all these little babies. So you kind of know what you're gearing up for. Actually, I had one female that I thought was gravid, turned out to be cancer and stuff like that too. So it happens. I mean, the problem is that if you're in this long enough, you're going to have a shit ton of heartbreak. Like it's just where it goes. This is part of it. You have to take the good with the bad, and but you kind of have to keep your eye open for it. Like there could be a lot of reasons for something, so you need to keep all the options open until you can start disproving some. Yeah, it could just be small. It could be the food's too big. Yep, that fixed a lot of them. All right, cool. What else? What else could it be? Could it be this? Could it be this? And then, but on something like they're developing lumps in their stomachs, like they're developing lumps that are hard and don't move. Well, there's really only a couple things that can be. So,
that's sad. I mean, but if you think about it, if you had 20 or 50 dogs, imagine the amount of disease you would see pop up, you know, and how often,
and the issues and the problems and the stuff like that. Like you kind of got to know what could happen here. And we are also keeping a lot of animals in one single area, and we ourselves are a very good vector, you know. Yeah. That's why quarantine's done a completely different day. Because I know myself, I deal with quarantine, and then I go downstairs and be like, you're dirty, I'll just clean you up real quick. Like you can't do that. Like it has to be that. There were days when we had a couple sick animals that my wife was helping me out with, that I had to stand there with my hands like this while she was doing shit, because I wanted to touch things and help, but I can't, because then I'm walking around the room touching other things. So you kind of gotta know, you gotta see what you gotta do. So
what do you do when a snake has an RI? Do you separate it from the rest of the collection, or do you just treat it and leave it where it's at?
You treat it, but I separate it on a different day. So like I'll clean the room, but sick ones are like, I'll clean the room on a Monday. So I'll go cages. What I like to do is I like to wear the nylon gloves and give a stack of cages. So this stack of cages is done. Gloves come off, thrown out, new gloves, this stack of cages, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of limiting what you got going on. And then obviously babies, new set of gloves, all that crap. For sick ones, it would be like I'll clean everybody on Monday and water everybody on Monday. And then Tuesday, I am only going to deal with the sick ones. So I will not touch anything until I'm anybody but the sick ones. That's it. I'm coming in, doing the sick ones, and I'm leaving. And it'll be after work because this is my office during the day, and I have my Ruffies up here. So I can't get up early, do the sick ones, and then come sit down in here. So it has to be like after work, after everything. They're the only ones I'm going to be touching, and then that's it. And then quarantine will be a different day, because the last thing you want to do is handle the sick ones and then go fuck around with quarantine, because they might not show any problems, and you break their quarantine, and then they go downstairs, and then here we are again. So it helps to compartmentalize it.
How big is your retic?
She's a 13, 14 footer.
So what happens if she gets an RI?
Don't know. It'll be a fun one. That'll be a fun day.
Because I have an Argentine. She's I think she's 3 years old now. And I just have like a fear of her getting an RI, and just the thought of like, I don't want to wrestle with a 6-foot snake.
I wrestle with her every time she sheds, and not because she's mean. It's just because she doesn't stop moving. And the problem is that when you have like a little 4-footer, it's like, it doesn't stop moving. Okay, fine. She's throwing me around the room and like dragging me places, and I'm like trying to peel one scale off of her. So, I mean, by the end of it, I'm soaked, sweating, like, bruised, and she's just curled up in the corner of her cage. Like, that was fun. Let's do it again sometime. I'd like a rabbit. So it is one of those things that is a fear. And we do have some stuff here that help. So we have a nebulizer, and nebulizers help. You put, we have a small, medium, and large bin, because the nebulizers, like, it's a human nebulizer. So they have a little spout that you put in your mouth for asthma treatment. We have it so that the spout will go into a bin. So snake goes in the bin, you put saline in the nebulizer, and you just kind of let them sit there for a while and get, it helps break up the stuff that's in their lungs and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So you do that, and we have a small, medium, large. We made the large just in case anything larger gets sick like that. We haven't had anything, knock on wood, but there is an option there for her. We also use them for, like, we've had rescue puppies and stuff like that have come in with respiratory issues and stuff like that. So, it helps. The big bin for a snake is also a good bin for a puppy. So it worked. The other thing is that my wife found this spray. It's called Silver Honey Spray. It's for wound care. It's supposed to be like, if your dog gets a cut, you can spray it on there. And it's supposed to be a bitter taste so they don't lick it. And it's also supposed to almost be like Neosporin. It's supposed to help heal it and keep it clean. Well, it kills Pseudomonas, which is what's in the bacteria and stuff that can get into snake teeth that causes mouth rot. So a lot of times they have RIs, they cough up the grossness, and then it gets caught in their teeth. And then all that cheese and disgusting stuff gets in there and starts rotting away their gums. And then you got mouth rot. So now you have RI, mouth rot, and stuff like that. So if they do have an RI, sometimes we just kind of spray that in the mouth. That keeps it clean, keeps it clear. So now we're only dealing with one thing, which is the RI. We're not dealing with RI plus now mouth rot. So
is that saline nebulizer, is that an alternative treatment to antibiotics, or is that like your first line of defense?
Well, and nebulizer is like, it helps. There's nothing, you can't nebulize anything that's going to cure. A lot of people are like, I nebulized F10. Like, so you nebulized cleaner so that the green tree python can breathe it. Like, I don't like that idea. So
you can inject bleach too.
Yeah, please don't do that. Like, there's a lot of that. So the nebulizer, I think, helps. I think it helps break everything up, but I don't think it is the be all end all. I don't think you can just kind of do it. But, it's one of those, when you're sick, does it help to lay on the sofa with a blanket? Yeah. Does it cure you? Fuck no. But does it help? Yeah. Like, yeah. So it's that whole thing. It's chicken soup.
Yeah, I was thinking about moving this girl, and I talked to Ish too, and he said, I mean, he's got the OCD for his snakes. I mean, he takes so many precautions, and I'm jealous. I want to get on his level of testing and swabbing and, all that. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I was like, I was sitting there thinking, like, if I move my ball python, she's going to have to go to the quarantine rack, and then she's going to have to stay in the quarantine rack with all the quarantine animals for months.
If you do that, then all your quarantine animals have to be considered as like you'd have to restart your quarantine.
Yeah.
Now, if your quarantine rack was empty, I'd be like, yeah, it wouldn't hurt moving her because then she's out of the collection and she's off on her own and you can deal with her there. But if there are animals in the quarantine rack, you're already risking the animals in the quarantine rack. And then again, if you were to break quarantine and move them, they could get sick over here and it's like crap. So it's like part of it is she's good where she's at and just deal with her there. Make sure she's the last thing you do or she's on a different day and all that stuff and don't really worry about it. But if you want to move her out, like I know some people get like they call them like bird medicine incubators or whatever. They like have heat AC control kind of stuff and they're supposed to be able to do all that. And it's like a pod that like you seal them into and they put their snakes in those, which makes sense. I know some people that put them in the incubators that they have if they're empty, which is great for a certain size snake. Like I wouldn't be able to cram my retic in my incubator if she got sick. I should just be loose in a fridge. That would be kind of stupid. So it's kind of like it's better to kind of leave them where they're at because they also want to reduce the stress.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Especially a ball python. They're so nervous and she loves her hide, and it's like,
I'd leave her where she's at. I would just maybe keep an eye out, and if you have to talk to the vet about changing medications or doing a culture to see what she's infected with and what drugs work on whatever she's got, I would say go that route.
Yeah, they kind of felt bad because I did call back and I'm like, guys, you're making me shoot this raspberry sugar goo into her every day and it's a nightmare, and they're like, maybe bring her back, but it's gonna have to be Monday. And I'm like, I have like one dose left after Monday, so I think maybe I'll do that last dose and then bring her in and say, can you do a culture now? And let's see what's going on with her.
Yeah, I would say because you'd be surprised with how that's the problem is that there's so much stuff out there that has now become drug resistant because that's the other thing is that we pump the snake full of drugs until it's eating and better. And then we're like, cool, done. We don't know whether it's actually done yet because normally you have like a whole little you have to do the antibiotics for a certain amount of time. So we are building drug resistant strains of stuff that's out there. And it's hard to try keep finding different drugs to kind of use. So I would say culturing is definitely the best stuff.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, the theory behind that is that if you don't go the full length of time, then the bacteria that survived that barrage initially, now they're resistant and they can just go on and just
make more. And now you got a more of a problem where you have to do a higher dosage or a completely different drug. And there's only so many drugs that we can throw at these guys before we kind of run into a little bit of a problem. So, I would say definitely do that. See what kills us. Cause the idea of, I want to scorch earth this thing is usually how I end up going, oh, it's sick. Cool. Whatever's going to burn it out of the, like, get it out of here. Like I want it gone. So that's stuff.
Are you always dealing with some sort of an infection with the size of your collection, or is it just random?
It's random. I mean, it's not just because you have a big collection doesn't mean listen, when you have a big collection, there's always something going wrong. Whether or not it's an infection, there's always something happening. Something's wrong. Some animal has decided that, like, I didn't shed my eye cap. Like, it's that kind of shit where there's always something, but it's not necessarily an illness. There's always that. So I'd say going through the year that we've had, I think I've only had maybe the 3 that got sick. And we're now down to 2 that are remaining sick. So I think we're okay. I mean, like that's a good year for me if we get down that road. But there have been other years where it's like you have to do these 4 or 5 got sick and they're big ones. And it's like, okay, so now it's a whole big thing and it messes up your entire breeding scheme. It just kind of got to keep watch out of what's going on. But then there's other stuff, like I said, that are beyond your control. Like I said, the cancer that developed in those babies. I have a couple. I have some tiger carpet pythons that are for sale right now, and I have about 3 or 4 that I did not put up for sale because they developed kink spines. So it's like, so I got to deal with those. Like I got to find, I'm trying to find a spot for them for people who want to take them and not breed them, because that's the other thing is I can keep telling people, please don't breed these. It's just a pet. And then they'll take it and they'll breed it. And I'm like, what did I say? So, but that's something you got to deal with too. It just adds to it. So there's always something with your collection, whether it's that, whether it's you found eggs randomly in a snake cage that wasn't supposed to have eggs in it. Or, you know, somebody threw up, somebody didn't shed right. Somebody decided they could push really hard on their glass, and lo and behold, the glass exploded. Like, yeah, okay. There's always something.
Yeah. If anybody's just listening to the audio of this, then they need to see you do the snake with the stuck eye cap impersonation. It was perfect. You
like I can't see. Yeah, like something on my face. Well, I have a Macklot's python who his name is Glitch, and Eric gave him to me, and he got an infection between his tear duct and his eye cap, and it kept like it would fill up with the gross and puff up, and he couldn't see. And he would shed, and it would kind of go down, and it would fill back up again. We did a ton of rounds of all these different antibiotics, and it would kind of go down. It would clear up a little, and it would kind of go back up. So the vet and I were talking about removing the eye because it wasn't doing any favors. And it was also a place for grossness to be. And I don't like that because it could lead to something else. And I couldn't just keep putting him on antibiotics. So they removed his eye. And it's scaled over, so there's like a perfect, like a scale that covers.
Oh wow!
Here, so it is really cool. But the way he hunts is he has to turn his head because he can't see you if you're. So you gotta. So he has to like turn and then dial in and then jump at it. So, but that was he does a good eye cap thing where he's like, I can't really figure it out, but yeah,
that's funny. That's got to be kind of cute.
He is. It is adorable, except that he's a vicious killing machine.
Oh, really?
I mean, right now he is. Everybody tends to get rammy when we're getting into fall because they know winter's coming and they want to eat, and I'm not feeding them. So everybody's coming for me at this point right now. So
yeah, my Argentine boa, the dog came in the office the other day, and I think she tried to eat the dog.
Yeah, yeah. That's the hilarious part is our new kitten. It's not even a year yet. She has zero fear about the snakes and just comes and sits down. And meanwhile, the retic's like up against the glass, like doing this at her, and she's just sitting there watching. And I'm like, will you please don't do this? Like, I need you to go upstairs. Like, I need you to not worry about you. And she's constantly just wants to be downstairs because she found out that the tortoise pen is heated, so it's a great place to take a nap. But it's like, no,
yeah.
Yep.
What do you feed your retics?
She eats Cornish hens, so like for hen or rabbit.
Have you thought about breeding rabbits?
Nope.
No.
I dealt with
went
rabbits.
into that head first.
Yeah, I dealt with rabbits. So in college and then slightly outside of college, I worked in animal laboratories where you had to breed the Dutch rabbits and stuff like that. And you had to deal with kits and things like that. And the fact that you're like, now don't make any room or she'll eat those babies. It's like, oh, cool. So I never wanted to deal with rabbits. I think I've cleaned up too many rabbit cages with their horrible poop and pee and stuff like that. So I'm good. A friend of mine did produce Flemish giants, but the size of those freaking rabbits, like I'd have to get them when they were born. Like it's not worth it. So
yeah, I'm getting them to feed the family and supplement the snakes too. I figure the Argentines will appreciate them down the road. So
that I think would work. And the friend of mine that does raise the rabbits there for meat and fur. So she did give me a couple that had already been butchered. Yeah. So I was able to, but they were still too big, so I had to break them down further and like feed an arm like to a snake and like that. So and then I think the retic took the core of everything after all that stuff was gone. But I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't. The amount of times, because I only have one big snake right now, which is her, so I don't really need to go get more rabbits. If I had to do that, but also I don't really feel like it. I'm good.
Do you plan on breeding her, or is she just like a pet?
She was given to me by Matt Minatola when he got his last clutch of retics, and I thought, she'd be fun to play with and do, and I have her, and she's been great, and I was fun to go around with, but I don't want to breed her because I don't want retics. I don't want to be. And I've been tempted a couple times of just picking up a male and making some retic babies, but then what do you do? And she's a dwarf. She's not a super dwarf. And like I said, I think she's anywhere between 13, 14 feet long.
Jeez.
About that thick around.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really feel like dealing with that many baby retics and dealing with the people I would sell those retics to. And I'd love to find a place for her because right now I have her in a cage that I think is just now starting to get a little bit too small for her. And I'd love to move her to somebody who would take care of her and not breed her, but I can't find somebody who would maybe want to do that and all that fun stuff. So I don't know. She's here for now, but I think eventually we're going to have to move her along.
What size cage is she in?
She's in an 8x2x2.
Oh, and she's just, yeah. What do you plan on keeping your Argentines in? Because they get pretty swole.
Those 8x2x2s. Like, that's the thing is that eventually we're going to need that. Like, I think the female will probably go in the 8x2x2, but then I have my olive python females in the other two because I have 3 8-footers. And I wanted to go down to 1.1 olive pythons because right now I have 2.2. And that would probably be where the Argentines would go, is I would clear out 2 of those 8-footers for them.
Nice. Yeah. How big are Keith's?
Keith has 8-footers, but he didn't really get his Argentines too huge, which is kind of, I think, hopeful. Because, and the way he put it is they're fine. Like, I want to say his adults are, I want to say they're about close to 6 foot. But he only gets like 15, 16 babies in a litter, which I think is fine. That's a great litter size. That's a great clutch size. I think I got it to 10 feet so I could get 45 babies. Congratulations. You have 45 babies to deal with. So, or
54.
Exactly.
I saw one this year that the guy had over 50 babies that were alive and well.
I would probably limit the size just because I wouldn't want to deal with 54 baby Argentines. I'd probably try to maybe cap them at about 6-7 foot, which is about the size of my carpets. My bigger carpets are like that big, my big coastals. And the big coastals drop 32 eggs. So I bet you 6-7 foot Argentine, if fed right, could probably drop somewhere between 20 and 30, which is the max I would want to deal with. So
I have my 6-foot girl in a 6x2x2 right now, and she seems pretty good in there. I would like it if she stopped growing, so.
That is the problem. Yeah. That is the issue. I'm
like, you're 3. This is good.
Knock it off. Ideally, I put a lot of animals. I have about 9 6x2s, and there's a bunch of stuff in there. And I kind of feel like Argentines, as long as they aren't pushing, Argentines and retics, if they're not mashing their face up against stuff, they're content with where they're at. They're good. Because I've seen some Argentines just fuck up their faces because they're kept too hot. And I've also seen the same thing with retics. It's like, if they can stretch out, if they can do stuff, if they're not mucking around with their, like, messing up their heads, you're doing good. And then I got my pair of dogtooth cat eye snakes, and they had just destroyed their faces because they were kept in arboreal bins. And I put them in cages with plants and a bunch of cover, and it's been slowly correcting and healing, and they've shed a ton. And it's just, I think it's just knowing when it's time to move up or time to move it out. So my retic hasn't done anything to show me that the cage is getting too small. That's my assessment for her. And it's because I know I would be heartbroken if she started messing up her face and I had to quickly move her along. Like I would not like that. So
how, I have no idea what I was just going to ask you.
happens.
Well, I was just my Argentine. She does push, but it's only when I'm in the room.
Yeah, because you're the food monkey.
Yeah. If I'm in here, and then and two, if I just open the door, she'll hang halfway out the cage and just be content with that. She's like, "This is nice.
This is nice. This is good." Yeah, because it's expecting food. That's the whole reason. Because like right now, I'll go down to my snake room. I'll start walking, and it'll be like I'll have the attention of every animal in that room because they'll just start putting it and they'll start doing this and start testing things. And then I walk out, they'll all curl up, go to sleep. It's funny because the animals that are old enough to know the routine, they don't move. They're just sleeping. It's usually like the 1 or 2 year olds that are now in a cage and they're like, oh my God. And the door opens and food comes in. It's like, they're the ones who are like up looking around. It's the 7, 8 year old is just like, I'm sleeping. And then when they hear me muck with the lock is when they're like, okay, I'll slide down now. And now I'm paying attention. So yeah, it's that kind of stuff.
Now, how much of that do you think is that they actually just love you?
No, they're not at all. These are predators. these are predators. They are hunters. They're expecting food. They're expecting stuff. Like they have no love for me. I've watched several of my animals hatch. And then they've plotted to kill me from day one to now after I've like fed them, cared for them, put mates in there with them. Like it, till like still hate me.
Yeah. It's she, I mean, and I think this girl, she likes any kind of stimulus, anything that's different, but yeah, she also is, I mean, I'll feed her a large rat and then open up her tub and she'll just open her mouth up again, like more food, and it's wild
in here. It's fun with that kind of stuff to give them something to kind of interact with. Like going into breeding season, I'll start staving the sheds of every male that I have, put them in a big Ziploc bag. One, because it's great to scent in a rival male's cage. You just throw the other shed in there. And if it's breeding season and you have an adult male that has a female in the cage and another male's shed is in there, you've now given him something to consider for the entire day. Like he will shove his whole face in it and slow tongue flick and then try to figure out who this is, how it got here, and what the hell is going on. And I've seen them sit there like hanging down, like python hunting, with their heads in the shed for 2 hours, just sitting there, like face in it, just trying to figure out what's going on. And then they're locked with the female an hour later. So even if they don't have a female in there, putting a rival male shed into a male's cage is a way to get his brain cooking.
Yeah. Make him a little jealous.
Yeah. Give him something to think about. Give him something to do.
Yeah.
Even then with putting branches and logs and other stuff in there to kind of give them something to worry about, give them something to think about, give them something to consider other than door open food. So that kind of stuff.
How many team worths do you have?
2. I had 5 at one point, but now we're down to 2.
What happened with the 5?
So I had 2 adults that I'd gotten from Chris Foley, and then I got them as juvies and raised them up, and then I had a younger female I got from Eric, and then I got the pair that I got from Rob. I sold the one because I thought I had too many Timor pythons, and I wish I hadn't. So now I was down to pair of adults and pair of juvies that I was raising up. The adult male started regurgitating out of nowhere, and I'm like, great. And it turned out to be stomach cancer. So we tried smaller meals. We tried doing other stuff. We tried, my wife took him into she was working for emergency vet at the time. They took him in, they tried doing a scan where they injected him or they had him eat barium or whatever, so they could track his entire intestine. It got down to his stomach and then stopped because there was a blockage, and the blockage was a massive tumor. Like they actually went to see if they could kind of remove or adjust, and it was all integrated and it couldn't be removed. There were too many blood vessels going to it. So we took him home and just tried to kind of, but he didn't last much longer after that. And then the female, I still had the adult girl at that point. I was trying to track down a boy for when she just lost a hellish amount of weight. Just like she was eating, but she was just dropping weight. And it turned out through her necropsy that she had some tumors throughout her body as well. That wasn't necessarily on her digestive tract, but she was just zapping. And I don't even like, it was just zapping stuff away. And also I think a lot of the times when we get something in like a Timor or a white lip, we get it when it's like 1 or 2 years old, but it's so small. We're like, it's a hatchling. And it's like, but how kind of far are we and stuff like that. So that definitely was something that sucked out of that one. So then I went from 5 to 2 real quick. So
damn. Well, if you want me to vacuum seal you some male sheds, I'll send them up to you.
I will let you know if that ends up being something I may need, but I kind of find that male snakes are dumb. They don't, It doesn't necessarily need to be from the same species, just as long as it's a male snake pee.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, like, you know, the ones that get peed on are the best ones, but I will let you know if that is definitely a thing, because I would like to, I like to get some Lester Sundays babies over here. So.
Yeah, hell yeah. I've got 2 males and a female from Ryan.
Nice.
And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be able to pull it off, but I can dream, you know.
That's where you start. You know, I never thought I could pull off Ruffies, and it took me 10 years of wonderful gut punching lows to get them. And I always kept thinking I could never pull off white lips until I got the clutch of white lips. So it's just you start with I can dream, and then it happens, and then you're like, then you scream at your incubator for about 20 minutes. So it's fun that way. That's the high I keep chasing, is the success of a project that you were kind of not hopeful for.
Yeah.
You know?
And it took probably 5 or 6 years to get to that point.
10.
Wow.
10. I've been keeping white lips for about 10, 12 years before I got my first clutch.
Shoot.
And it was issue after issue, problem after problem, like move. These animals tried to kill each other. This didn't work out. Sold it, got frustrated, sold all of them, got new ones, raised them up. It wasn't really working. Got a bunch of wild caught ones that I shouldn't have been mucking with. It was that kind of stuff, back and forth, until you decide just to sit down and do it the correct way, which is get the babies, raise them up, and go from there. And then I did the exact opposite of that. I went and I got a captive born and bred male that was paired with a wild caught female that somehow got a clutch. So now I'm raising up a trio of captive born and bred babies, 2 of which I produced. The other one I got from Ryan because we swapped. And that's when I'm doing it the right way. But while those are raising up, I can keep playing with this now proven pair to see if I can get them to go again.
Yeah. So if I wanted to stop my Argentine from growing and I'm satisfied with where she's at now, how would you feed her?
Less often.
Yeah.
So what is she eating now size wise?
Large rat, but she could definitely, honestly, she should be at like extra large. I'm just filling up the bag.
You could do an extra large. I would just do it less often. So depending on, because how often do you feed?
Like every 2-3 weeks.
Do it once a month.
And
then give her winter off. That's the other thing, is when they start getting big is when they start going into hibernation time. Like, this is now the shut off food cycling. Like, congratulations, you have now hit adulthood. Guess what happens from October to March? Bye. Like that kind of stuff. So that will definitely kind of slow the growth rate.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. So then just be ready to feed them when they come up in March.
Yeah. I was talking to Warren about that, and yeah, he was saying that you want to start that, you know, the development and everything, and start giving them the winter off, you know, if you plan on breeding them like a couple of years in advance. And
yes,
Yeah, so she's probably ready for that anyway this year to
I would do
stop
that.
eating and take some time off.
It's a shock to the system if you're like you who have been nurtured and coddled your entire life, experience winter. Like I have a couple of 3-4-year-olds that are not big enough to breed, but I'm going to turn off this winter because I want them to be ready by the time they're 4 and 5. So they're going to have a year or two of winter stuff, and then they're going to come back in. And I also kind of feel like that's when you start seeing growth spurts as well. Is you kind of turn them off, turn them back on, feed them heavy, and they kind of know that this is the time to kind of keep going. And that's when you start kind of see them go into the mature thing. But also with like what you're doing, if you're taking them down for winter and you bring them up and then you feed them like once a month, you'll kind of maintain. It's like if you were to bring them up for winter and be like, and now you get a rat every 2 weeks, like that's when you're going to start seeing them pack on size.
Yeah. So it's pretty wild. I mean, Warren was even saying that they grow throughout the winter.
They do. I mean, that's why they shed. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yep. They're constantly growing. They're constantly growing just a little bit that we can't see. But I would say it's important to give them the jumping off point of feeding them up when they're small so that they can kind of be ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It's the putting them on a maintenance diet when they're fresh out of the egg, I think just causes small stunted, like they should eat a ton when they're small.
Yeah. Cause that's probably what's happening in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and through the first years, I think when they do a lot of their growing.
Yeah. But they're probably eating a lot of frogs and lizards and
anything that's coming across the path. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when did you get started on reptiles? When did the obsession start?
So I went to a agricultural science college, Delaware Valley University in Pennsylvania. And I went there with the ideas of working in zoological settings and stuff like that. And then you get there and everybody wants to work with like a tiger and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And the roommate that was assigned to me at random was Chris Foley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he and I were roommates freshman year until he left the school. But in that small amount of time, him having a huge collection of like white lips, he had some rattlesnakes at the time, and then rat snakes and stuff like that, it kind of opened the door to snakes. Then we kind of went to Hamburg, and he was the kind of person who had been going to those for years. I had never heard of this. And then that led to my first Cali King. And then after that, it was my first carpet python on my 18th birthday. So that just pushed it all. And then that kind of just opened it up to a whole world and idea of new situations, new things. So it just kind of went nuts. So I went from one carpet python and a Cali King in my college dorm room to, I think when I left senior year, I had like 15, 16. And then I moved home, and then it kind of just went even further, just more and more and more. And then that plugged me into the Morelia Python forums, which was carpet pythons and stuff like that. And that just kind of absorbing as much knowledge as possible. And then, yeah.
How did you meet Eric? Were you buying groceries one day and
I threw a snake at him? No, it was so what happened is that Eric was on my radar for a completely selfish reason, was because there was a clutch of carpet python out there that I wanted. But every time I went onto this website, because you kind of track the animal you wanted through somebody's website, hoping it didn't sell by the time you could raise enough money being a broke post-college student. And every snake that I kind of wanted all of a sudden would be like, sold, thanks, EB. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? He is pissing me off. I really wanted that snake. And I wasn't the only one, because other people were like, we don't know. And he's like, and then I find out through the Morelia Python forums that his name is Eric Burke and he lives in Philadelphia. And I'm like, This asshole is in my backyard buying up snakes, buying up carpet pythons that I wanted. Like, oh, Jesus. Then I find out that he has a huge collection of stuff that he's bought, like top of the line, state of the art morphs from UK pythons that were imported by Nick. And I'm like, this guy's going to be huge and he's going to run me out of goddamn business. Like, I don't know who this guy is. And then Eric makes a post on the Morelia Python forums saying that he has started a podcast and he needs a co-host.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, all right, well, now is my chance to get close to this Eric Burke and kill him. So what I will do is I will pretend to be his podcast co-host for a little bit and figure out what he's all about.
It's diabolical.
Yeah. So I emailed him back and said, I'll do a podcast with you. And, you know, I'm close.
Meanwhile, you've been stalking him.
Meanwhile, I've been stalking him like oh God, but
you were the tiger.
I was. Yeah. So it was funny because we must have been missing each other at all these things, because his supermarket and where he lived were down the street from a school I was student teaching at. We had been to a lot of the same shows. We had known the same people. We had talked, like, I just don't think we knew each other. So it was like, I would leave a table and he would walk up to a table or something like that. So we have a conversation over the phone about kind of how we would like MPR and stuff like that to go. And then Eric's like, all right, well, are you ready? Because we'll do an episode right now. So the second episode of MPR is the second conversation Eric and I ever had.
What?
Recorded on air. And it's like, well, this is interesting. And it was my introduction. So then it just came to, all right, well, I'll do a couple podcasts, and, you know, we'll probably just, I imagine we'll both kind of, like, life will happen. We'll both get bored. We'll do a thing. We'll stop. But we kept going, and we kind of just kept doing it. And he and I felt more and more comfortable with each other, and were able to kind of jab back and forth and have an actual conversation, as opposed to like cardboard, you know, how do you feel of snake? I feel good. You feel good? Yeah. It's like that kind of stuff. So that kind of happened. And then we took our first break between season 1 and season 2 for the holidays and stuff. And I thought, this is it. We're just never going to come back. Like, he's just never going to contact me. It'll be like that thing. We'll kind of be like, hey, you, when we see each other, but that'll be it. And then he contacts me and he's like, hey man, well, like, are we ready to roll for the next one? I'm like, shit. All right. And that just kept happening. Like, it just kind of kept going until it's now just part of life. And I would not have the collection or experiences I've had without MPR. It's weird because I think we just turned 13.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. That's wild.
Yep. 13, because the first episode Eric did was himself alone in his bathroom recording his thoughts on carpet pythons. And then the second episode was him and me. And then it's just been the roller coaster of insanity since then. So there you go.
Did you end up getting what you wanted from him?
Killing him? No, I didn't kill him. But you kind of figure Eric is his own unique, special kind of creature, because he's like, he can totally appreciate an animal and he has an idea of what to do with an animal, but he doesn't want to play all the games of selling or breeding or dealing. So it's like, he gets this stuff, and every once in a while he's like, take this. I'm like, okay. And I just run off with it. And then I do all this stuff with it. So it's fun having those interactions. And also it's like, he was never going to do any, like, he wasn't going to run. He's not the kind of person that would raise up an entire army of carpet python just to bowl people over at a reptile show. He would much rather raise up an army of carpet python and then give them away to people that he thought were going to appreciate them the way he does. So that's part of it too, is that he's far too nice of a guy to murder. So, you know, it's all that going. Yeah.
You're like, damn it, he's too
nice.
Damn it, he's
too goddamn nice. I can't kill him. Yeah, that was, I think, the third conversation. Yeah. Yep.
And how many times? I mean, you guys have done more stuff together than most married couples. I I mean, seriously.
for a while there, I'm like, you were my longest lasting relationship. This is horrible. Like it is. Yeah. I mean, I think up until when my wife and I went to Scotland, I think he was the farthest vacation I've ever had with somebody. Yeah, was over to Australia, but yeah, it's fun to travel because thank God we both are the same way. That was, I think, one of our first trips to Texas. He's like, listen, dude, I'm the kind of a guy that gets to the airport early and then like mucks around and gets a drink and chills. Are you cool with that? I'm like, yes, God, please. I don't want to be, I don't want to be one of those people that they're like calling for you over the PA system as you run through the plane.
Yeah.
That is my nightmare scenario. So that kind of works. And I know he puts in so much stuff to all the other thing. And the good thing is that our senses of humor kind of align. And we can have fun and not rub each other the wrong way or something like that when we're out in the middle of the desert, just that kind of stuff. So it's definitely enjoyable. And of course, you add more people to that team, Rob Stone, Justin Julander. It's kind of fun like that.
How many times have you guys been to Australia?
Once. I've been to Australia once. Eric, I think they're headed out in 2 weeks for, I think this will be their third or fourth trip. So they're going to Sydney, Darwin, stuff like that. I was holding off on doing anything. So I was hoping we could go to the Kimberley in 2025. Unfortunately, that looks like that's going to get pushed back to 2026. So that means I could probably do some other stuff. So we're talking about trips to the Carolinas, Georgia, because we want to start looking for more cane brake kind of stuff like that. They have they're on a hunt for all the rattlesnake species. So I've been kind of, tagging along when I can. So they're like all in the 20s and I have like 6. So it's like, but we're kind of doing those. And then we're trying to plan maybe a trip to Arizona or something like that, just to kind of go out and do some local, some U.S. herping, and then we'll hit the Kimberley in 2026 because that one looks more and more like we're going to need to get like camping gear and really rough it. So we want to make sure if we're going to do that we're going to do it right and really get on to the rough scale pythons.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking to Jason Patterson of Aussie Arboreals. And he made me want Ruffies and he made me want diamonds. And in one like 10-minute span of time.
I keep trying to trade the Ruffy babies I have for diamonds, but the people who have diamonds also have Ruffies. So it's really not helping me right now, but they are my favorite. Morelia is a Ruffy. Like
really?
The reason they're up here. Like that, these are all Ruffies.
Yeah.
And I've loved them, just their eyes, their teeth, the way they kind of deal with the whole story about finding them, that the fact that these animals are even here is awesome. And
what's the story on them?
So they only live in one gorge in the Kimberley, or one sets of gorges or something like that. They're only in a specific place. So it's like an island species on a continent. So there was an open up of they were allowed to collect a certain number of species. So Mark O'Shea did this whole thing about going to find them. They didn't find them. I think they crashed a helicopter at one point, and some people need to be airlifted out. It's a bad expedition. And then the last day of the expedition, they managed to find, I think they found all 5. I think they found one because like they were filming the special and they're like, hey, sometimes you don't find them and sometimes just the way it goes. And then they found one and they had to reshoot the ending of the special that they found this thing. So they got about 5 individual animals that they brought into captivity. And I think they got 1 or 2 breedings. And then there was a fire at the facility, which I think killed most, if not all, of the founder animals. But damage was already kind of done because you had the clutch of these babies and they just quickly spread through Australian herpetoculture. Like they bred like bunnies. All the zoological facilities had them. Anybody who wanted them in private hands had them, and they were breeding very well. And that's when they started leaving Australia to other zoological facilities in Europe, in the United States. I think that's when the reptile gardens in South Dakota got them. I think it's when the LA Zoo got them. And then I think some landed in European zoo hands where they continued to breed. And I also think some went into private hands where they kind of exploded out through Europe, breeding there. And then they were imported by Cameron at Bushmaster. And I think maybe a couple other places got them. And they started going through the U.S. pretty much the same way. So now I think there are more rough scale pythons in captive hands than there are in the gorges in Australia. Wow. So that's pretty much where we're at. But
all from those original founder animals.
Yeah, the fun thing is that I think one of the zoos recently posted up that they got a clutch of Ruffies, and it was the third time rough scale pythons had been produced in an AZA facility. And it's like, cool. So I can, if I get one more clutch this year, I'll tide AZA facilities, is what you're telling me. So good to know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I after seeing those and I mean, they've kind of been on my radar, but the more I see them, the more appreciation I have for them as an animal.
They're one of those ones that you need to see in order to kind of, because on pictures they look great. I mean, like obviously the big head shield, the color of the eyes, the way they look, but it's something like you appreciate them more when you get them in your hands, especially a really good looking adult. So
yeah, and it's crazy. Like the guys in Australia, the price points for these animals over there, it's like, God dang, I wish
like
I lived in
$200.
Australia.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like $200. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and the most insane looking diamonds for like $700.
Yep.
And yeah, it's kind of it makes me want to look at houses for sale in Australia.
It would be one of those things where it's like I wish they would just open up importation from a breeder to the U.S. because I'd pay rough scale prices, U.S. rough scale prices for Aussie Ruffies. Like I would do that, and just to get some new blood, new things in. But
do you think that'll ever happen?
No. If it was, I mean, you can dream, but I think that they've kind of dug in their heels about whether or not they'll let it go. And I know Gavin Bedford had such a hard time being able to sell Owen Pelly pythons on the continent to different states in Australia. Like they wouldn't allow him to do that. And then he had zoological facilities in the US that were primed and ready to go, but he couldn't get approval from the Australian government to export the Owen Pelly pythons. So those kind of hurdles stopping from into like educational facilities or zoological facilities going into the private hands, they're never going to allow that. Why would they? Yeah. Now, you can look at it all the different ways and say it would cut down black market stuff. It would help bolster the Australian economy. They don't care. They're not. That's not their point. But still, all these things are getting hit by cars, all this other stuff. I just don't understand it. But I don't make the rules, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine Owen Pelly's being in America?
I would. I'd make room for those. I'd sell a project for those. I would get rid of something to make Owen Pelly pythons, just because they hold a special place in my heart with all the stuff that we did over there. So I think having those in my collection would be one of those. I would keep it. I wouldn't even need to breed it. I don't care. These are mine. Like I got these for me. So
what would you, how would you keep them? What would you keep them in?
I'd keep them in something tall, really tall, because they're an arboreal species without trees. They like rock outcroppings. They like a tree adjacent to a huge rock crevice with cracks they can get into. So it'd be like a scrub, but I would want to have stuff that kind of gives them ample amount of room to climb with ledges and shelves and tight places for them to squeeze into. So I would do that. But I would keep pretty much exactly the way that Gavin says in the book, temperature wise, food wise, stuff like that. Because they're a big python, but they're a lean python. So birds, I would chicken other stuff like that. Like I wouldn't even try rats with those things. I would
That's
just
all
go
they
straight
eat is
bird.
birds, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem is that like they're eventually they get up to a size where they're eating a cockatoo. Like, okay, like it's a rabbit-sized bird. Like it's So that's when they're like, and that might be a difficult thing to do. But if you get chickens, I could, I would go that route.
What would you do? Just like a whole wall in your living room or something?
I would probably, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to put them in this house. Like that would be something I would have to figure out first. But I would probably set up 2 big cages that were like 6 foot tall, and then maybe like a 6 foot wide, and then 2 of them like with like glass front kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think Cody Bartolini has them with his Mambas. They're big things, and then like the whole front lifts up to work this cage that's pretty deep as well. I would probably do that, and then have some sort of connection so that when it does come for breeding time, they're able to kind of use both things and kind of do that route. So I would do that, but
total showpiece. And
yeah, I mean that would be something that I would do, kind of like a big showpiece. And again, it's not even like I'm showing it to anybody. It would just be for me to sit down and watch. So
that, and I've heard you talk about this, going to Australia and going and herping and everything. That's kind of changed the way that you keep the animals, right?
It's changed kind of what I would expect. Cause I mean, I think I entered into the point where, the snake is kept at like the hot spot's like 87, 90 degree hot spot and that kind of stuff. And kind of toning that stuff down where, I have a night drop year round. Whether or not the room itself gets to where the night drop is set is up to the weather and everything that's going on outside, but they don't experience heat all the time. They have to get up, they have to move, they have to go sit out, they have to bask, and then they go do other stuff, and then they chill and they sleep in a different spot. Like it's all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that has changed the perspective. It also has changed kind of what I like to do with the cage. It's like, it's not sterile. It's not bin, water bowl. Like we're adding shelves, we're adding rock ledges, we're adding PVC pipes, logs, branches, all that stuff. So giving them different options to use. Ceiling hides. Pythons freaking love ceiling hides. Yeah. So that kind of stuff.
How do you, when you're bringing logs and stuff like that into the house, how are you treating those so you don't bring in parasites and things like that?
Put them in a big ass black trash bag. So I'm talking like I have like 45-gallon contractor bags for like the big trash can I use in the snake room. Put them in that, tie them up, and I leave them in the sun for like several days. But I'll also maybe spray some like bleach spray in there as well. And then that usually does the trick. You still might get some like wood mites or something, but they're not going to hurt anybody. But that usually does it. Just cook it that way. I know some people are like, I put it in the oven. I'm like, I don't like putting like a log of wood in my oven. Like that feels weird to me. I have a gas oven and I don't know if I want to do that. Like it's so, but I'll just do it that way. And if you do it in the summer months or even the winter months, the sun is outside cooking. You just leave that thing right out, and it's like 200 degrees in there, and that'll that'll do it. So
I think I drive my family crazy. I put the oven to like 160, and I try to cram as many things in there as I can for like 12 or 14 hours and just cook the shit out of it. Because I had the post hole beetles in some grapevine from a reptile show.
Nice.
And all of a sudden, I start seeing beetles lining up on my windowsill, and I guess they can be in there for like 12 years or something.
There's something Riley showed me where when he's working at his job and he got a box of crickets. And he goes, this is why you throw away shipping boxes and you don't trust cardboard in your snake stuff. Because he dumped the box of crickets out, like just dumped it. And he's like, there's nothing in here. And then he put it in a bin and went back. I want to say it was like maybe an hour or a day. I think it was probably like a day or two later. And there were smaller than pinhead crickets everywhere. What? They had been in the cardboard and come out through the cardboard.
Wow.
He's like, this is why people who do unboxing videos in your snake room, you're idiots, because there could be mites in the cardboard of the box that you didn't see. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, or you unbox it and then you go quarantine it, but you still like the box could be a problem. And it's like everything should be cooked, cleaned, sterilized a little bit before you bring it in, throw it inside your snake room. Like I know people like to go get oak leaves and stuff like that. Just put them in a trash bag and put them in the sun for 2 days, then bring them in. Like, don't be like, cool. Like it's that is, I think, a lot of the problems that we ran into in the early 2000s is because people did like breed loans for like high-end green tree pythons, and they'd be like, it arrived in with the female. It's like, well, wait, what about a quarantine? Like, nope. And I saw somebody who's more of a higher end facility. I delivered a Bowen's python to them, and they took it, male, checked him out, said he's good, opened up a Freedom Breeder drawer, and I thought, okay, here's where he's going to quarantine. There were 2 females in the Freedom Breeder drawer, and he dropped the male in with the females and closed the drawer. To which I'm like, well, that's a lot of money right there. Like that's a lot of money you're risking right there, but okay. Some people just don't think about that kind of stuff. We all get excited. We all get way too excited sometimes.
Yeah.
But you got to kind of pump the brakes every once in a while. So yeah, I mean, cook the things, scrub the things, burn the boxes. Like, all my shipping boxes and supplies are kept up in our attic where there are no snakes, and it routinely gets hot as fuck up there. So like, it's,
How do you treat mites? How do you prevent them from coming into your collection?
The first thing is every new animal comes in, gets a Nix bath. So if you go to the store, you can get Nix shampoo. They have like Formula 1, 2, and 3 for fighting lice. Formula 1 is the one you use. Put a little bit of that in a bath, mix it all around until it's all kind of foamy, whatever. Dip the snake in. If it's bad, like if they already have mites, maybe let them soak in it, but you don't want them to drink it. So soak them in clean water, fresh water first. This way, if they want to drink, they'll drink, and then put them in the dip. You dip them, check around the eyes, check around the chin, and the vent. Those are the main places where a lot of mites can hide. If you're concerned about them being under the scales, if it's a big animal and with big scales, put a little bit of Dawn dish soap in there, because that'll pop bubbles that are underneath the scales, and everything will get in there. So that's just if I purchased an animal and I'm going to set it up for quarantine, it gets dipped and it gets set up for quarantine. Even with the dip, it's not 100%. So you got to watch. So quarantine has to be like on white paper or white paper towel. They have a clear hide box. They have a water dish that is a light color, because if they're going to have mites, you're going to see them in the water dish. You're going to see them on the paper and all that stuff. Now, if you see them, then I get one of the off pest strips, the white plastic with the green thing on the inside. Yeah. You can cut them up. The green thing on the inside, you can cut them up and put them, like I have the green thing runs out, like it eventually dries out and it's all crummy. You throw that out, you can keep the plastic thing, because then if you need to get other ones, you can kind of like take one new one and divide it up between like 4 or 5 of the white plastic things and put them places so that nothing can get and touch that stuff, because that can be an irritant. You set that up either in the cage or nearby, and then you do regular dips with the Nix solution. If it gets really, really bad and they kind of just won't go the hell away, that's when you're going to start looking for a dose of ivermectin. Ivermectin can be in their water bowl. They can drink it. It's not going to hurt them. And ivermectin can also be injected. If it's injected, it pretty much poisons their blood so that the mites and stuff try to feed off them and then they just die. Ivermectin is a little bit of a step. I don't really like to go too far with that.
That's what's in like flea and tick treatments for dogs, right? The oral ones.
Kind of. Ivermectin's it's a dewormer for they use it a lot for barn animals. That's where you can get it. You can get it at like Tractor Supply and stuff like that. It was a little bit harder to get during COVID because somebody said it would cure COVID, and that's incorrect. It's gotten better. You can get it now.
God bless them for trying.
Jesus Christ. Ivermectin's good for things like nematodes, worms, stuff like that, but also mites as well. But some animals can be too small to get a dose of ivermectin. So there's that. But then you just kind of keep treating. And this is why quarantine exists. You just keep going until there are no more mites.
Yeah.
And then you keep going still. And then after a while, then you can start backing off. But you have not lived until you've had to treat 200 animals for mites.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to think about that.
Don't. It's not fun.
My quarantine rack, all the bins have been proventamited, know, and I put them out in the sun and spray them all down so that way I don't have that toxic crap in the house. And
that's good for bins. Like cleaning the cages is good for preventamite. And then also if you have, like, depending on what your floors are, if you have carpets, you can get spray that is for like flea infestation for carpets. Like, and you can spray that down on the carpet and that'll kill them too. But if you just have concrete or something, you don't need to worry about it too much.
Do you do this with every animal you get, or like what if you're getting something from Eric?
Everybody. Doesn't matter.
Everybody.
It's just like how everybody's got a quarantine, everything gets a dip, everything. Because you know what? The one time you don't do it is when you lax, is when something bad happens. So I got a pair of spotted python babies from a friend, and they were so small. I set them up, and I set them up in quarantine. And then I got an Angolan python. I got some carpet pythons. They all got set up in quarantine. And then I noticed that the spotted pythons were crawling, like they had mites. It was bad enough that I thought I was going to lose the baby spotted python. It's so small. So treated them, but then also started treating everybody else in the quarantine rack, because now I've made more work myself, because I didn't see anything on the Angolan or the carpets for a bit. And then the spotted pythons got better. And then I noticed that they were in the water bowls of the carpet python and the Angolan python. So now everybody's getting treated. So we had to go through all that stuff and dipping and scrubbing. And we almost got to the point of ivermectin, but then everything just died. We were done. We were clear of it. So, but that's quarantine. That was 5 animals in quarantine.
Wow.
Okay. As opposed to all the animals I have downstairs.
Yeah.
Like baby racks, adults, animals with mulch and stuff, and all the other things. So it's good to do it now and just kind of get it done. But yeah, every animal has to be dipped, have to be checked, and has to be set up. I don't care who I got it from. That's the procedures here, because the second you don't do it is the second you get burned.
How long does quarantine last for you?
It should last 60 days. And then if something goes wrong, it can get pushed to 90 days. Or if I get an animal from somebody that I'm not 100% sure on, like it's like I went and I got this wild caught animal. Yeah, give him a 90-day quarantine. Let's push him out a little bit. Like it's that kind of stuff. But it should be 60 days. If everything's going smooth and stuff like that. And the problem is that it restarts. So I get an animal from Eric and I'm like, all right, 60-day quarantine. And then on day 58 of that animal, I get a shipment and I'm like, all right, 60, crap. And now he starts 60 more days. So all of a sudden, some animals, I'm like, it's been 90 something days. Get the hell out downstairs. Like it just has to be the point where nothing new has come in and I can assess the situation. And they've eaten, they've shit, they've shed, they've done all this stuff they're supposed to do. Not necessarily. Like I've had some animals that don't eat in quarantine and then eat when they get downstairs. But once they're done, they go downstairs and then they're good to go. But it should be at least 60 days.
And if they come in with eggs or something on them, how quickly are you going to see those mites pop up?
I don't know. I mean, I would just say like, that's why I do the Nix stuff, because it's supposed to kill lice and eggs.
Yeah.
So that's why I would say get them in and dip them, because then it's like clean slate. Everything should be dead if, and then if something pops up, you can kind of go with that. But I think with regular dipping is usually how it ends up. I think what ends up happening is the mites get off and they lay eggs in the bin or around the bin. So it's like dipping them. And then the next day, everybody who's hatched and was not on the snake is now on the snake. You just kind of keep doing that, where their food supply is what's killing you. And like, that's kind of where that goes. And then obviously you take the bin out. Once you discover that the animal is mites, you clean their cage completely. So prevent a mite and spray all the furniture, let it sit out in the sun, let it do all that, put it in, and then you dip the snake, because you're not going to be perfect. So you're just going to have to keep dipping and keep going and get everything done. So it's just going to be a little bit of a hassle for a bit.
Now, are the mites showing up in the water bowl because the snake is going in the water bowl and they're dying in there, or are the mites going to the water because they need water?
I think that the animal goes into the water, because I think that's a lot of the ways that they kind of fix them in the wild is they just kind of dip and do that, because I don't want to say mites get full and then they kind of drop off, but you can have enough of a mite infestation that it like the animal becomes anemic. So I think a lot of them know that there's something like bothering them, because they can't go through scales. They got to get underneath the scales, and they got to get in places where it's soft. So like in the eyes, around the eyes is a favorite spot, and then underneath the chin where everything splits right there, and then under scales. It would be kind of like they would soak, and then a lot of them would kind of pop off and drown. But then the ones that were underneath a scale in an air bubble will come out and go to the soft places and other things like that. So
you don't have Boelens anymore, do you?
I don't have any. I never had Boelens.
Oh, okay.
I transported a Boelens. I know friends that had Boelens. I don't want to spend $25,000 on a funny looking, very large scrub.
Yeah.
I have many other things I need to spend $25,000 on.
Yeah.
So
what are there any snakes out there that are high dollar that you want but you don't have?
Diamonds.
You want diamonds?
I want diamonds. I had diamonds for a while. I had a pair that I got from Todd, and I unfortunately lost them out of the blue. And then I got another pair of diamonds, and that just didn't work out, because you kind of got it as a way to, like, I think I lost out of that original pair. I think I lost the male. So then I got another pair, and I'm like, now I got a trio. And then I lost like the 3 of them. And I'm like, all right, I need to stop for a bit, because clearly I'm not doing something right, or this isn't the right place for it. So I haven't done them in a while, and I think I could get back and do them justice and do it right. And I want to set them up as like a big display thing in the living room, kind of a thing, and really do that. So
cohabbed or separate?
I would like to do cohabs, but I would also possibly do one where it looks like maybe they're separate, but only I can tell that they're separate, kind of deal. Like there's like a blind spot that has a divider that can be removed. There's a lot of different ways I would kind of try to do that, but I'd like to do a big cage cohabbed. Would be cool.
Weren't you talking about, who was talking about doing a claw machine?
Me. I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I found a busted ass claw machine, and I'm like, holy shit, that would be fucking great, because you got this, it's glass all around, it's got a hood, and then they pack it full of shit so they can put all the prizes. You remove all that, you can have a deep like thing of mulch and stuff, and because they had that little chute where the little prize window is, and it's the giant plastic circle, you could build some sort of like underground burrow that has a viewing area. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Rip off the front of that cover thing, put a black plastic thing in there, put the lights up in that hood. Oh my God. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Like a cage that size, professionally made, because also it's sliding glass, locks and everything. A professionally made cage that size is like $1,000, $1,700.
Yeah.
A busted claw machine is free. Like, oh, holy shit. Like, okay.
It's free? That's awesome.
Some of them are free. Some of them were like $200. I'm like, I could convert the shit out of this.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is I'm like, I just need diamonds and space and my sanity, because that's the other problem, is that I wouldn't be able to like cart it over here. I'd have to get somebody with a truck. But oh yeah. I could do that. That would be fun to do.
I can't wait to do diamonds outside here. I mean, just talking to Jason and him telling me about his temperature and how it is in the winter and everything. I'm like, dude, that's Florida. It's basically Florida.
Yep. I know Crutchfield does his outside. I know Lucas does his outside in California. Yeah. And Brandon does his outside. I think a lot of people do more. I think more people have success in doing diamonds outside than people do inside. I'd love to set up. Problem is, we have neighbors like right up on us, both sides. I'd love if I had a little bit more space. I'd love to set up something so that, like in the summertime, they could be like outdoor diamonds. Yeah, that'd be great.
A greenhouse would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
a heated greenhouse, you know?
That would be, I wouldn't trust them to be outside in the winter, but something where they could have, like, you've seen like those cat condo things that you can put outside and
Yeah,
shit
the
like that.
catios.
Yeah. One of those just outside set up. So like in the summer months, they're just chilling outside, and then come winter, be like, all right, it's time to go inside in winter. I have to move animals all over the place for winter just because it like they condense, animals go together, and I have to move these animals out here. If bredli are in the main snake room, they cannot winter in the main snake room. They won't get cold enough to breed.
Yeah.
So I have to move shit all the time. So the tortoise has to come in winter. So why can't the goddamn diamonds? So that's what I want.
Yeah, I got a local guy that makes chicken coops and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes I talked to him, I told him what I wanted, and I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about keeping some snakes outside. I want to do 8 feet wide, maybe like 4 to 6 feet deep, and 6 foot tall, maybe 7 foot tall. And he was like, yeah, sounds good. Probably like, you know, he quoted the 8x4x6 at like $450.
That's awesome.
And free delivery.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't even have to like put a trailer on my truck or anything like that. He'll just bring it right to me.
Yep. They put enough climbing things and some heat panels and stuff in there for if it gets really cold during one of the nights. But other than that, I think they're golden.
Yeah. So I'm talking to Brandon about payment plans right now. We're working it out.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
All right, man. I really appreciate you coming on. It was good talking to you.
Yeah.
And it was I learned a lot. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely. And that's the idea, I guess, is to kind of learn something on a Saturday. So
hell yeah.
All
All right, man.
All right. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.